Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Center of Love. My name is Oliver. My friends call me Ollie, which means by extension, you should all be calling me Ollie. And I am the spiritual coordinator here at the Center of Love, which means it is my honor and my privilege and my duty to coordinate, I guess, which is ironic because I'm not a very coordinated person, but I do try to bring interesting speakers from within the community up here to share their messages every second Sunday. That's part of what I do. I often also stand here at the beginning of the gathering and try to create a container or set the tone or the pace of our gatherings and speak a little bit about our community, which has been going strong for over 2 years now. And today, how I'm going to set it up is like this. In many churches, you will find deacons. Who here has heard of a deacon? Like in a Christian church, it's like somebody who assists the priest with priestly duties and rituals. Well, here at the Center of Love, we don't have any deacons. What we have are beacons. Beacons of light and love. And guess what, folks? Every single one of you is a beacon of light and love. We're all here together to shine the light of our truth and of our love in a world that so desperately needs it. I'm sure I'm not the only one who senses it. I'm sure I'm not the only one who sees it. We are living in momentous times, and what we do here as a community and what we do when we go out into the world matters. It has an impact. It's important. And I'm very grateful that you're all here with me to be beacons of light and love in this world. Now, to be a beacon of light and love, what does that mean? How can we do this effectively? Luckily for us, there are many ways. One of the ways that we can do this is by getting to know our truth and then expressing it with our words, our thoughts, and our actions. As you can tell, the world out there is quite busy convincing you that you are not enough, that the way you are now is not enough. You're not tall enough. You're not skinny enough. You're not young enough. You're not knowledgeable enough. And so in a world like this, when you go out there and you are authentically and unapologetically your true, authentic self, you are indeed a beacon of light, and you are casting that light out in the world for all to see. You are a startling example for people who may be dozing at the wheel. And so it is very important for us to get to know our truths and to hear other people's truths. And that's the second thing we can do to be beacons of light and love. We can listen. One of my favorite teachers, the Roman philosopher Epictetus, said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Therefore, we should listen twice as much as we speak." My Lord, that is not always easy for us, for some of us, for all of us, perhaps in the right context. When the words flow, sometimes it feels good because in this space, when we speak, we are heard, and it feels really special to be truly heard and seen by others. And so these are ways that we can be a force for good, for progress, for unity, and for oneness in this divided and fragmented world. Now, as a result, when people come here every second Sunday, they share different things. Could be stories, could be wisdom, could be past experiences, or it could be practical knowledge to help us be our best selves. And today is a great example of that, because if I want to be a beacon of love and light in this world, I want to go out there and I want to listen to people objectively with both ears, without judging, without referring back to myself and my own opinions and my own biases. If I want to do this, I have to become aware of my biases. I have to become aware of how my mind may distort and bend things in certain ways so that when I'm out in the world and I see things, I'm not necessarily seeing things as they are, but rather as my mind tells me that they are. And that can be a real hindrance if you're trying to be a beacon in the world. If you're biased, if you have blind spots, if you are looking at the world through distorting lenses, you will not be as bright a beacon as you could be. And so I'm very grateful that our speaker today, James Redford, is coming to share some information with us about 10 cognitive distortions that many of us, and I would suspect perhaps all of us, have fallen victim to in the past. Now, James will tell us all about this, but what I will say from my own experiences is that the mind is a great tool for detecting patterns. And the way that it operates is by creating shortcuts. The mind, the human mind, is an amazing tool because it can take in millions of pieces of information, and using these shortcuts, it can condense things down to a manageable amount that we can use to navigate the world safely and effectively. This is powerful. Before AIs and algorithms, we have nature's AI right here. In the subconscious mind, we hold tons and tons of details and information that we don't remember, but sometimes at the opportune moment, these details rise up to the surface. So it's a very powerful tool. But what makes it powerful also can make it dangerous, and that's the shortcuts that it uses to distill information into bite-sized portions. And I believe that many of these will be considered cognitive distortions when we are not aware of them and when we do not operate with an awareness of their existence. And so, a little bit about our speaker today, James Redford, board member of the Center of Love, founding member, one of several, been here since day one. And what I can tell you about James is that he is an eclectic person. He has a wide-ranging set of interests, curiosities. He is an avid reader, a student of many different disciplines and methodologies. And so when he comes up here, he has a wealth of knowledge and personal experience to share. But more so, he also has an awesome wit. And I find that every time he comes up here, there's always laughter, no pressure. And people leave feeling empowered after James speaks. And so today, James, I welcome you to the pulpit. Come tell us how we are deluding ourselves with cognitive distortions.
Good morning, everybody. It's certainly a pleasure to be here and pleasure to see your smiling faces. So today we're going to delve into some pop psychology, one of the numerous interests that Oliver alluded to that I engage in. Few people in the past have said, you should have become a psychologist. And I'm interested in psychology, but, I don't think I could handle people's shit on a 6-hour-a-day basis. Seriously. Psychology is definitely one of those problem industries where you're listening to people's issues and problems on a daily basis. But anyway, I study psychology primarily out of self-help and find it very, very interesting. So today we're going to delve into the 10 cognitive distortions, 10 ways that we practice twisted thinking. You're going to recognize some of these immediately. Some of them might be new to you. You will recognize that you practice some of them. I will share with you some of them that I practice probably on a fairly regular basis, but because I'm aware of them, I can really mitigate how I respond to a person or situation because I know that this distortion is going on. So the Buddha said, we become what we think about. And other spiritual influencers and other philosophers have said much the same thing. Our thoughts become things. Our thoughts create our destiny. So apparently our brains have somewhere in the region of 60 billion neurons. And off of every one of those neurons are around 6 or 7 synapses that connect to other synapses. And thoughts are electrical impulses that jump from neuron to neuron and synapse to synapse. So I'll let you do the math, 7 times 60 billion. We have a pretty complicated brain. Apparently, according to neurologists, we have the most complex organism in the known universe, right here. 5 pounds of gray matter, and it is thinking all the time. Unless you're a good meditator, and then you can calm that brain for a little while. But even when you go to sleep, the brain wants to think and create some pretty interesting dreams for us. So one of the many things that separate us from other creatures in the animal kingdom is our brain and our ability to think. So I think it would be very advantageous for us to be aware of our thinking patterns, our shortcuts that Oliver alluded to, the shortcuts. And it's also something called cognitive habits. We are very habitual species, not just physically, but mentally. We gravitate to certain habitual thinking. So let's start. Oh, I should point out where I got this from. Years ago, I came across this book. It's called Feeling Good, the New Mood Therapy by Dr. David Burns. And it was published in 1980. And since then, this was a bestseller, North American bestseller. And since then, the psychological and the psychiatric industry has really adopted the 10 cognitive distortions. And if you Google it, all kinds of sites will pop up utilizing this concept. So here they are. Number one, I'll ask you to quietly in your own mind identify if this relates to your pattern of thinking, and nothing wrong with that. I mean, we're humans and this is the way we think. Number one is all or nothing thinking. That's black and white thinking, okay? On the poles, black and white, generally all or nothing thinkers don't permit the spectrum of colors in between the black and the white. This is extremist thinking. I generally don't subscribe to this myself, but we can see it clearly in extremism. Whether you're right wing or left wing, this is black and white thinking. It leads to a lot of conflict in the world, politically, primarily, but also in the religious and philosophical realm, you know, if you're a black and white thinker. Perfectionists tend to gravitate to this type of thinking. And I can see where in the past I have definitely utilized this. Number two is overgeneralization. And I noticed that in all of them, they use the term overgeneralization. I just use the term generalization. When we generalize something, we're just clumping one incident or person into a vast bucket. Words like always, every, all the time, every time, all those people, it's boom. We're generalizing about a certain event or a person and putting them into a giant bucket. Oh, those Americans. Oh, those French. Oh, the Canadians, they're so polite. Oh, really? You know, I think I brought this up before. This is overgeneralization. And we can overgeneralize about what's been happening in the United States and the MAGA people. I've definitely overgeneralized about that. I think I'm going to use the American political system as a analogy a few times here. So overgeneralization, mental filtering. Mental filtering is like putting on a pair of sunglasses that have blue lenses, and all you see is blue. Okay. So we take a negative detail about a person or event, and we dwell on that negativity exclusively. Now, this has been going on in the American political system for quite a while, and we've definitely seen it ramp up since 2016, where the filtering that's going on, and I'm thinking of two major news networks, the right-wing Fox News Network and the liberal left-wing CNN. The filtering that's going on there is absolutely amazing. And that's why I listen to CNN, Fox, Al Jazeera, BBC, and CBC, and I get the other side of the story. So mental filtering, I think, is probably something we tend to do as a defensive mechanism, but it would be beneficial for us to take off those blue or rose-colored sunglasses and see things more clearly. Disqualifying the positive is related to mental filtering. There's a positive experience, but you don't count it. Quite often, the disqualifying the positive relates to our own psychology, where we downplay our own successes and our own positive attributes, and we don't credit ourselves enough. Disqualifying the positive, I realize, is something that I have definitely done regarding the American political system, whereas although I tend to lean to the right, I have disqualified the positives in the Republican philosophy since the Trump era started, which I don't think is to my benefit, because the Republicans can't be all wrong. That's number 4, disqualifying the positive in other people as well. When I have a conflict with somebody, I remind myself it's the conflict, not to conflate that conflict entirely with that person. That person is probably a really good person, other than that area of conflict that I'm having with that person. Number 5, our favorite. I'm sure we all practice this one. Jumping to conclusions. This is a mental habit. It's so easy. It's a nice shortcut. So we reach a conclusion without supporting evidence. Great example of that is the election was stolen. I'll give you a personal story of jumping to conclusions. A few years ago, I left a wallet in the hallway. And later in the morning, when I went to get it, it wasn't there. And the only person that had come into the house that day was the house cleaner. And I jumped to conclusions. The only person that came in was the house cleaner and her daughter. The wallet was there. I know it was there. I saw it there first thing in the morning. And I said, but I don't have evidence. But it had to be her. I almost confronted her on it, almost, but I kept reminding myself, I don't have any evidence. It's only my thoughts. 2 months later, Fairway calls me up. He apologizes it took so long. You left your wallet in our store. I was pissed off. Really? It took you 2 months to give me a call? But so there was a classic example of jumping to conclusions. Thank heavens I didn't confront her on it. Okay. So that's a real easy one. I think, yeah, most of us probably practice that one. Number 6 is magnification and minimization. This is also known as the binocular trick, because when we look through binoculars properly, we magnify the situation. If we flip them around, we minimize the situation. Another term for magnification is catastrophizing. That's been a big one for me in my life. Part of my anxiety issues, I tend to catastrophize. You've heard the term before, making a mountain out of a molehill. That's what catastrophizing is all about. It's prevented me from doing a lot of things in my life because I catastrophize. Well, you know, this might happen, so I'm not going to go there. But most of the time, this doesn't happen. Emotional reasoning. I feel, this is number 7. I feel this way, therefore it must be true. This is a real dangerous one. As human beings, we are a righteous species. When we think of something, we're right. And despite the evidence that's given to us, it's really hard to change our minds. When we're locked into a certain belief, it's called anchoring. We're anchored to a thought. If I asked you right now what the population of Canada is, there would probably be varying numbers, and those numbers that you're holding on to are you've anchored. The last time you heard Canada was at 35 million, so you'll probably say, well, I think Canada's maybe at 36 or 37 million now. I was anchored at 40 million. I checked last night. We're at 41.4 million. So anyway, we're anchored to all kinds of thoughts, you know, whether it's philosophical or religious or dietary habits, we're anchored there. So in emotional reasoning, once again, talking about the American political system, we saw it over the last 4 years since the 2020 election. I am absolutely gobsmacked that such a large population of an industrialized, technologized country like the United States practices emotional reasoning, that the 2020 election was stolen, regardless of the fact that 50 states, Republican and Democratic states, the board of electors and the Supreme Court and 50 other state courts all declared it as a free and fair election after investigations and after recounts. There was still a massive body that practiced emotional reasoning. We know it was stolen. We're not going to change our minds. I was just stunned at that. So emotional reasoning, another one to be careful of. Number 8 are should statements. Oh, I was good at this. I think I've really improved. This is shoulding on others and shoulding on yourself. I should be doing this. Other red flag words are ought to and must. This will lead to stress when you should on other people, and it can lead to guilt when you should on yourself. You know, shoulding on other people and on ourselves are based on expectations. We expect certain standards of behavior out of people, maybe out of organizations. And this leads to frustration, it leads to anger, it leads to resentment, and consequently really dials up our stress level. Understanding that there are more nuanced ways of motivating people other than shoulding on them is very beneficial. Perhaps phrases such as, perhaps you could, have you ever thought about, you know what would really make me happy, as opposed to, boom, you should be doing this, would probably positively motivate people more effectively than shoulding. Sometimes we should on people just on the road. Oh, you shouldn't be driving that fast. Oh, you shouldn't be in that lane. And it can lead to a little bit of anger, occasionally maybe road rage. So, number 9, labeling. I talked about this a few months ago. Labeling. This is a judgmental generalization, usually on people, sometimes on situations. And we define the person with a derogatory label. I would suggest, as I did in my last talk, label the behavior and not the person. That way you're thinking much more clearly about the situation. You are judging the situation to some degree, but you're not labeling them. And if you have to label them, as I attempted to communicate in my last speech, label them with a scientific or a positive label that defines what they are, what they're doing, the problem you're having, as opposed to the really derogatory negative labels like idiot, jerk, a-hole. We don't need that. Labeling is necessary. We need to identify a situation, we need to identify a person and what they're about and how they're behaving, but we don't need to label them with derogatory names, although it's fun once in a while. Calling somebody a so-and-so through the window as they cut you off. And number 10, that was number 9, labeling. Number 10 is personalization. You see yourself as the cause of a negative personal event. You personalize something. I know I have done that, and I know I'm still doing that. I'm taking responsibility for events that have happened in my life. And it plays havoc with my sense of self-esteem and guilt. That said, sometimes personalizing something is taking accountability for your behavior. I think what Dr. Burns is indicating here in terms of the new mood therapy is to be careful of personalization when you should not be taking on the weight of a situation when the situation really was outside your boundary. So just be aware of personalizing something. So to finalize, the advantages. The advantages of getting to know the 10 cognitive distortions intimately, being aware that you're practicing them, but also being aware that other people are practicing them. And when they do practice them, you can think more clearly. You don't have to buy into the story that they're putting forth. When people today use words like, oh, every time, or all those, all the time, or all those people, bam, that's, for me, it's a red flag. And I go into neutral zone. I just listen to them. I don't buy into their story. By practicing or being aware of the 10 cognitive distortions, we can practice clearer thinking, more positive thinking. We can practice cognitive complexity, which is simply, we've got a really complex brain. Rather than utilizing cognitive habits shortcuts we can delve into the situation or the person more with greater complexity. And ultimately, when we're thinking clearly and responding rationally to a person or to a situation, it's generally resulting in less stress in our lives. So there you go.